We're here to bring a new type of news show.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Bringing news just for you. It's Monday, May 4th here in Seoul. I'm Isujin, and this is News Generation. Joining us today is Q.
Thank you for having me.
For coming in. Also, Key's with us.
Happy Monday.
Happy Monday. And both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. So as we kick off a brand new work week, there's something special just around the corner. So tomorrow marks a big day for children and families across the country because it's Children's Day here in Korea, celebrated every year on May 5th. So it's a day dedicated to celebrating childhood with families heading out to make lasting memories. So how is Children's Day typically celebrated right here in Korea, Kyun?
Before I answer your question, it's a pity that I don't fall under the children's category nor the parents category for now. I'm kind of in the middle of nowhere. Yeah, with you as well. But this day is all about children and parents devoting this particular day in May to make their kids feel very special, appreciated, and happy. It is one of the most joyful, family-centered holidays of the year as kids are extremely excited because parents pre-plan big events catered just for them. And for me, I remember growing up in Australia, celebrating Children's Day. I actually went to church, and church would prepare a big event for all the kids. So one church leader would take all the kids to the cinemas and watch like big animation movies that would always be released right before Children's Day. So that all the kids
come out around
exactly.
That time.
So that everyone would want to watch it, and then sometimes we'll go to like amusement parks as well. So I have very good memories from the past, but. Ever since keep becoming old, not really celebrating Children's Day, I had to look forward to Parents' Day more and to treat my parents to good dinner growing up. Yeah, so I want to go back to being a child.
I feel that very much. So you actually
Yes.
relevant, very important person on this day. So what do families usually do on Children's Day here in Korea?
First of all, I want to adapt Ki-hyun as my son so that I can be treated well. Tomorrow is a very critical day for me, and it's disastrous. It's always a war to get the right timing with the toys and everything. But we take kids normally somewhere special. Depending on kids' age, we take them to, like Ki-hyun said, we go to amusement park, or if they're a bit younger, then we take them to what we call Kids Cafe. It's a children's playground, basically. Then we eat kids' favorite, not necessarily healthy, but things like pizza, chicken, hamburgers, or Chinese food, what kids like. And most importantly, we have to stop by at the toy store to get them favorite toy. Unfortunately, past several years, I've been working on Children's Day. But what I normally do, I bring my kids to my workplace, because normally anything I do is related to Children's Day. So it's like a family month day thing. So I bring him in, and we just play together. And I buy him a nice toy at the end of the day. Then he's all happy.
You sound like the best dad,
Yeah, trying to be.
I wish I had a dad like you.
Maybe this will work out, you adopting you. So every week we take a closer look at a global issue and put it up for debate. And what better topic to talk about today than fast passes, and they have been drawing growing attention, especially around peak seasons like Children's Day. So what started as a convenience feature is now sparking a broader conversation about fairness as well as access. So what exactly is a fast pass called fast track pass here in Korea, and why is it so controversial?
So a fast track is a separate queue that only those who have purchased a special ticket that costs much more than the usual regular tickets can use to wait for rides. By paying a higher price, they can enjoy the rides more quickly without having to line up like the rest. Similar products are sold not only in major amusement parks in Korea, but also in many countries around the world, including the United States, Japan, and even France. However, since amusement parks are considered spaces mainly for children, there are ongoing negative opinions about this system, and the debate over pros and cons remains heated, which we'll talk about today, whether it's okay, whether it's right to have these kind of fast track passes available or sold in amusement parks where they're majority of them are kids, and you don't want them to feel kind of like left out and seeing other kids cut in line just because they paid more. It's hard for kids to really understand this concept. And even as parents, it's not something you want your kids to kind of be revealed to, comparing to other people who are considered more wealthy.
Exactly. And I actually know a parent who's actually debating about this this moment.
Really? Okay.
He's going to Japan in May for Children's Day. And he's debating how many passes he needs to get. So that is also...
So he's working hard, saving up more money.
They're so expensive too. So while it clearly offers convenience and efficiency, it also raises important questions about who gets priority and at what cost. With that in mind, so let's break down the opposing views. So is paying for faster access economically fair, Key, in your opinion? As a kid too.
That's exactly why I'm sitting down right here at this very building, working hard to save up some more money. I don't see a huge problem here if there's a right balance. Looking at your favorite singer's concert, of course, then, for example, you go closer to the stage, obviously, it's more expensive, right? So paying more for a better service is, I think it's just a natural thing. Even some experts and scholars in economics also point out that buying time with money happens all the time in economics. Personally, I used Fast Track Osaka last year when I took a trip with my mom the other day, and when I had to book a restaurant, there's an app where the list of restaurants, normally high-end restaurants or very popular restaurants, can be reserved with a bit of extra money. Honestly, it was super convenient, efficient, and it was worth it.
So that perspective highlights how this system fits within a broader market logic where paying more for better service is should be widely accepted. But when the setting shifts to a space designed for children, the conversation can take a different turn. So what are your thoughts on this, Keelan?
Even though there may be no issue from an economic perspective, like you said, the situation shifts a lot depending on where you go, because amusement park, like I said, is mainly for children, and it's meant for children, meaning that they're not yet familiar with the business side of amusement parks, because most amusement parks are privately owned, and how much profit it actually brings by selling these fast track tickets. Now, adults usually teach children the importance of waiting their turn, being fair, but this system can be seen as suggesting that it's acceptable to cut in line if you pay more money, going against that belief, and in a sense, showing that money can kind of solve everything. Additionally, for families with limited financial means, there is a possibility that the children may feel a sense of relative deprivation, something both the parents, especially the parents, and the kids don't want to feel. Kids are, I guess, too young to take this as a source of motivation and use this as something to become more competitive so that when they grow up, they'll be financially capable to purchase a free pass, for their kids as well in the future. But given the nature of the place, it would be ideal if as many children as possible could enjoy the rides in a fair, joyful way, even if it means waiting in line in a fair manner. Because, when you're young, you can't, it's good to teach children to, wait your turn. It's good to be fair. But if they see those things at a young age, we are already living in a very tough world. But it is, it does make sense from the business standpoint. But as kids growing up, I guess exposing them to these kind of things later could be the better option.
I guess it's probably hard for some parents to explain why their kids might not be getting the fast passes.
It's quite sad as well.
It is. As someone who has never actually used a fast pass before, I can maybe relate to that a bit.
Me too.
So it raises a deeper question about values, whether convenience should come before fairness, especially in spaces meant to be shared equally. And that tension between efficiency and equality is also what keeps this debate ongoing. So you also want to hear directly from our viewers. So we ran a poll on the Ada News YouTube channel asking, and here's what the results showed on this. So a clear majority of respondents, 69%, said they support the system or find it reasonable, while 31% say that they oppose it. So the results suggest that while concerns over fairness clearly exist, many people are ultimately willing to accept fast track passes as a practical and efficient option, especially in situations where time is limited. So what began in amusement parks is now expanding into other parts of everyday life. So where else are fast pass systems starting to appear, Key?
Sure. So in Japan, the fast pass system has been introduced in popular restaurants, allowing customers to skip the line, of course, and enter ticket right away. It's currently available at around 80 restaurants in cities like Tokyo and Osaka. The one that I used is a similar service, not exactly the same, but there are other apps that offer the same services. And prices vary depending on the crowd levels, weather, and time. And in some cases, it can go up to 6 times the regular cost, meaning you have to pay pretty much 5 times more than what you're supposed to pay at the restaurant.
So now even dining, something we see as a basic shared experience, is being reshaped by this idea of paying for priority. And just like in theme parks, this shift is also drawing mixed attention. So is this smart business or just profit-driven unfairness in your opinion, Kim?
It really depends where you stand on this idea, but as a consumer myself, it feels a little uncomfortable that businesses seem to be pursuing profit too aggressively. These days, there are many convenient systems, like applications, where you don't have to physically line up, be in queue, and you're instead actually called, or even you receive a message when it's your turn. Of course, you need to arrive in a few minutes to be served a table. However, instead of adopting such systems, the restaurants that Ki just mentioned in Japan, they've introduced one you have kind of no choice but to pay extra, which creates a negative impression when it comes to having a single meal at a restaurant. Now, it also gives a sense of privilege for the wealthy, which does exist in today's world and is applied in many areas. I do agree with that. But to do so at a popular restaurant, it doesn't seem, I guess, customer friendly to the general public. At least that's what I think. And maybe some other people might have the same feelings as me.
And that concern reflects a growing discomfort with turning everyday experiences into services based on how much you pay. So at the same time, others argue the context matters, especially for certain groups. So could this actually benefit some time-strapped tourists, Ki?
Sure, after hearing what Kyun says, I feel like I'm becoming a greedy CEO. But interestingly enough, 90% of the users for some restaurants in Japan are actually foreign tourists, and about 70% of those users are from their 20s and 30s. So for travelers with limited time, this can be a very efficient option. Like when I took my mom there, waiting for 2 hours in such a hot weather could be harsh for my mom, but when I used the application, it was a lot easier. I go there, I get introduced to the table right away, so it was convenient. So some people might feel it's worth paying extra just for the experience.
Right, seeing it that way, you can really see that it becomes a lot less about privilege, and sometimes it's more just about flexibility, offering people options based on their own needs and constraints, which ultimately brings us back to the bigger question of where we draw the line between convenience and fairness. And so we also want to hear about this directly from our viewers. We ran a poll on the channel asking if popular restaurants introduce a paid fast pass that lets you skip the line, what would you do? And here's what the results showed. So a plurality of respondents, 47%, said they would avoid the service because it feels unfair, while 35% said they would use it to save time, and 18% remained unsure. So this suggests that compared to amusement parks, people are more sensitive to issues of fairness in everyday settings like dining, where the idea of paying to skip the line can feel less acceptable and more like an unnecessary privilege rather than a practical convenience. So let's take this discussion to another space where time and access are even more critical, which are none other than airports. So do fast track services or fast pass services belong in public spaces like airports, Kyun?
Yes, it actually does, especially in airports in countries where many tourists visit, like many countries in Southeast Asia and some countries in Europe as well. Again, it does have its pros and cons that we've talked about today, but the key tension is efficiency against equality. Fairness concern will be an issue, and fast track system may become problematic if regular lines become intentionally worse to upsell fast track, and access is purely pay to skip with no operational justification, and if the system undermines the idea of airports as shared public space. So I think it all comes down to, are we going to cater for the minority, the wealthy, people who have just, I guess, more money, and are we going to give them privilege by undermining the majority where people need to just kind of queue up in long lines?
Right.
So it's a very, it's a controversial, it's very tricky situation. situation as well. But look, if I had the money, I would obviously want to have that kind of advantage of
Right,
not being able to line up. And like he said, as tourists, time is of the essence. You know, you can't wait in line forever because, you know, at the end of the day, you have to go back to your country and you're actually there to travel, to have fun, and obviously there to spend money. And as a business point of view, yeah, you need to make profit. And by selling these kind of, you know, fast track tickets or, you know, giving privilege for people who actually pay extra on top, it does make sense, but we have to look at it from many different perspectives and we'll get different answers depending on where we stand.
I think it's also true what you said earlier about how the setting really matters. When you said
that as well.
when we talked about children and amusement parks,
Right.
I was a bit hesitant, but you know, thinking about it as airports, I feel like it's more, you want to be more practical.
Convenient.
If someone's willing to pay more, I'm kind of like, go ahead if you really need
Exactly.
it. Yeah. So what are your thoughts on this?
So from another perspective, from maybe a businessman point of view, I guess, it's about efficient allocation of the resources. It's not intended to create controversy or discrimination. The idea behind the system is pretty much it's like fast tracks to simply offer an additional option, allowing people to pay for convenience, mainly to save time, and that additional revenue, like I said, could be reinvested to improve the airport's facilities. So in the end, it can help, like Hyun mentioned, those miners who, you know, having a hard time in the airport, but resource allocation can definitely help running the airports too.
So that does really highlight the core tension in these discussions, whether public services should prioritize equal access for all or adopt market-based approaches to improve efficiency and reinvest in better, perhaps, infrastructure. So before we wrap up, let's take a moment to reflect on today's discussion. So what are your final thoughts on today's topic?
Well, a lot of things are running through my head right now, but because tomorrow's Children's Day, if we look at it from a children's point of view, and if they're, let's say, going to an amusement park tomorrow and they see other kids cut in line and they will ask their parents, Mommy, Daddy, why is that kid, you know, not lining up? Why does that kid get to...
I don't want to wait in line.
I don't want to wait in line either. And then it's going to be very difficult for the parents to actually explain why they have to line up like everyone else. And seeing just a few people, few kids, you know, just have faster access. So in terms of the venue, like amusement parks, I guess trying to kind of like not make it too open by selling these fast track tickets might help kids educationally, and then when they grow up, they can experience it much later once they enter the real jungle. But at a young age, seeing that, being exposed to those kind of things, like I said, it's like it might open them to feeling relative deprivation, which is obviously, I felt it before growing up, and it wasn't a great experience, you know, seeing the wealthy, the rich have greater access, more privilege, and it felt like, I didn't want to blame it on my parents, but it did act as a motivation for me, which kind of worked out for the better. But I'm saying...
You're one of the most patient people I know, so I guess it does build character. There's that.
I can wait in line, but I wouldn't choose to wait in line. I would just go to another restaurant, you know, or I wouldn't even pay extra to try that restaurant. So I guess it's not happening everywhere, but if it's happening in amusement parks and it's becoming an issue, I guess everyone can work together to kind of alleviate this thing to become a bigger growing problem.
Right, well said. So what about you? What are your thoughts on this?
Well, again, business point of view, it can be risky and it may reinforce the idea of that money can solve everything, which we do not want to put into children's heads. There are also clear upsides, creates additional value and revenue for businesses and offers convenience for the users as well. So I guess it's all about the balance. Like for a fast track system, it's been introduced slightly more than a decade for a certain amusement park, but they don't do it like every hour. It's normally provided for those who have a yearly membership, like annual membership, for example. You know, that in that case, it sort of makes sense that they get those kind of privilege. So we're likely to see more of these sort of services in the future in many different industries, many different fields, I guess. So it all comes down to one thing: finding the right balance, I guess.
Right. So we talked about amusement parks, restaurants, and airports. So for you personally, you think should be expanded, include those, and also make them more available?
I mean, it's already expanding to different businesses. You know, we started as, for example, amusement park and dining places, but it starts in cafes, and you go into, when you're buying some, for example, home appliances, like the newest gadget, for example, then normally you pay extra to get those in first hand, right?
That is true.
So I'm guessing this will expand in the future. Again, you know, the money comes in to play the game, which is not something that we are looking for, but that's unfortunate truth that we face nowadays.
That is very true. So at the heart of today's discussion is a simple question: should convenience come at the cost of fairness? As fast pass systems expand, finding the right balance will only become more important. So where that line should be drawn is something society will have to decide together. And that brings us to the end of today's episode of News Generation. But News Gen will be back on Wednesday at 10:30 a.m. Korea time with more stories and discussions. A big thanks to Kyun.
Thank you for having me.
And also Ki.
Thank you.
And to our viewers, thanks for watching. Hopefully this Children's Day, the only thing you skip is work and not the line. We are
News Generation.